The impact of the 2024 elections on small businesses.
Welcome to Business Matters, a presentation of the Chamber Coalition, which comprises the New American Chamber of Commerce, the African American International Chamber of Commerce, and the Hispanic American International Chamber of Commerce. To become a chamber member, be a guest, or register for our events, go to www.nacc.nyc. That's www.nacc.nyc, or call us at 718-722-9217. That's 718-722-9217.
A very warm welcome to everyone. We are joined by a very special guest, Ben Johnston, who is a small business expert at Kapitus, and we're going to be discussing the impact of the 2024 elections on the nation's small businesses. Welcome, sir. Good to have you here with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're very welcome. So, can we talk about currently what legislation is in place and its effect on small businesses?
Sure. Well, looking at the Biden administration's accomplishments since coming to office, I think that his signature legislative achievements have really been around the infrastructure bill and the Inflation Reduction Act. And while neither of these bills were written specifically to target small businesses, there are a number of provisions in these bills that are working to onshore manufacturing, make sure that small businesses are included in the contracts that the government is issued, and really trying to focus as much of that government spending into the U.S. economy and into small businesses in particular that might be supporting spend of some of those projects. And so I think that, recent legislation around that, and then of course, all the legislation that came as a result of the pandemic with the PPP program and the where the government was injecting capital into businesses with the expectation that they would not lay off their employees during the pandemic and would keep their businesses running. There was over $800 billion injected through that program into the economy. And then there were additional loans made to small businesses that put that total stimulus number over $1 trillion. And then there have been subsequent lending programs to small business since then, many of which done through the Small Business Association, the SBA. And so when you take all of that into totality, there's been a tremendous amount of stimulus that has been offered to small businesses over the past 5-6 years, which has fueled the small business economy in many ways.
Okay, now talking about fueling the small business economy, former President Trump, he has threatened, so to speak, to impound federal funds that Congress has appropriated for organizations like the Small Business Administration, which provides programs and services intended to help entrepreneurs. The business centers, the veteran business centers, they offer entrepreneurial training and counseling along with opportunities, and all this would be phased out and devastating for small businesses. So as an expert, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, certainly the SBA is an established lending institution to small businesses, and they currently play a very important role in the small business economy. And so to the extent that funds were withheld from that organization in a large manner, that could have a negative impact on small businesses for sure. And, I think it's all it will all come down to degrees to which funding would be withheld, and for which programs funding would be withheld. But then, I think you also have to take a step back and look at the overall Washington climate and who is likely to control the House of Representatives and the Senate, in addition to who controls the White House. And at the moment, the best prognosticators out there are looking and saying, regardless of who is in the White House, it's likely that the Senate and Congress will continue to be split. And if you have, although some are calling for the House to flip to the Democrats while the Senate flips to the Republicans, just looking at the map and current voter sentiments. But if you end up with a split House and Senate, really dramatic legislative change is unlikely to occur, just because there simply won't be enough votes to get, a massive change in overall economic policy through the system. And so, Trump may promise a number of things coming into this election. Biden may promise a number of things coming into this election. But I think we have to look at the political realities of Washington and weigh whether dramatic change is truly possible, given how closely split the House and the Senate are and are likely to be through the next election cycle.
Okay. So looking at all what's happening, going beyond the headlines, can you give a breakdown about the nuanced effects on the cost of capital and overall economic demand?
Sure. Just speaking broadly about the situation for small businesses, I would say that it's a complicated environment for small businesses today. Higher interest rates have really taken a bite out of the profitability of many small businesses. And that's especially true for those that are financing inventory and financing raw materials, or need additional working capital for growth. And inflation continues to be a real problem for small businesses. Even though it's really improved a lot over the last 18 months, in particular, wage inflation has probably been the most painful aspect of inflation for small businesses. We're seeing a historically low unemployment rate, and that's great. It's good for small businesses in many ways because consumer spending is really dependent on Americans having jobs. And so when you have a low unemployment rate, you generally have strong consumer spending, and consumer spending makes up the majority of small business revenue. So strong employment generally is good. But the flip side of that for small businesses is that, small businesses have a real hard time obtaining quality workers at affordable wages, especially when the economy is strong and unemployment is low. And so what we're seeing is, while lots of types of inflation are mitigating right now, wage inflation continues to grow, and that's a challenging position to be in for small businesses. It's also one that probably isn't going to get better anytime soon, just given that we have a large population of older Americans who are increasingly retiring, and ever since the pandemic, we saw a lot of people leave the workforce during the pandemic and have been very slow to come back into the workforce. And so there are a lower percentage of the population is actually working today than was 5, 6, 7 years ago. And that continues to be an issue. And then when you compound on that pretty restrictive immigration policy, in recent years, and what I think can be expected regardless of who wins the White House this year, as increased border security and a more difficult time for migrant labor entering the United States. All of that ends up restricting the number of employees available in the workforce. And so, I think small businesses are dealing with a lot of different issues. Adding on top of that, banks have really pulled back ever since interest rates rose really rapidly, and a number of banks failed, including Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, and First Republic. Banks have really started to conserve capital and have restricted lending. And one of the first places many banks looked to cut were small businesses. And so, while the economy remains strong and consumer spending remains strong, finding good employees and then financing growth has become really challenging for small businesses.
Okay, so when you look at Wall Street, you look at big businesses, you look at Main Street, their interests are really motivated by stability, whether it's price, political, consumer demand, workers, which generally allows them to plan and make profits because that's what it's all about. What do you think the impact is going to be overall?
The impact on higher interest rates on the economy, or are you asking me to prognosticate about the 2024 economy?
Yes, generally, the general impact, yes, moving forward.
Yeah, well, I think the Fed has done a very good job of raising rates enough to slow the economy, but not so much as to tip us into recession. And so I see that mythical soft landing actually coming to fruition here. And so, I think the Fed is looking at current employment rates being very strong, current consumer pricing coming down, but still above their target levels. And they're saying, well, we would like to cut rates, but we don't want to overstimulate the economy at the moment. And so they're sort of just holding steady right now. The expectations are that their next move will be to cut rates, but I don't really expect them to do that until they see inflation fall further from where it is, and probably see consumer spending fall and employment rates fall a bit as well. So when we see that, that's probably the time that we're going to see a reduction in interest rates. Until then, I think we're probably going to be looking at the status quo for a while, which, given the current economic environment, isn't too bad. You've got near full employment, strong consumer spending, prices that are a little bit higher than everyone would appreciate and hope for. But I do see. I'm fairly bullish on the overall economy this year in 2024. I do think that there are things that need to be worked out in the economy. I still think that there is pain to be taken in the commercial real estate market as people have gone home and now work from home in much greater degrees than maybe some office towers have fully appreciated and have been baked into their pricing. So I think there are some potential issues on the horizon, but at the moment, I would say the Fed's done a pretty good job holding us, in a steady positive growth rate environment, and I expect that to continue during this year.
And finally, Mr. Johnston, your organization, Kapitus, provides business loan financing. What are some of the tips that you would like to provide to small businesses that you would be telling them more of a yes than a no?
Sure. Well, I would say that, the most important thing to do as a small business owner is to look out into the future and try to understand how much growth you're expecting to have over the next year or two, and understand how you are going to need to finance that growth. When orders come in, that's a great thing, but often there's a lot of prep work that needs to happen before that order can go out the door and a small business can get paid. And so in order to prep for that work, you'll often need to buy raw materials, buy equipment, hire labor, and make sure that you're ready to move forward. And so it's important to have a strong financing partner at your side to help you fund that growth and make sure that you have sufficient working capital in order to take on those additional jobs. So we always advise that you try to maintain a strong relationship with your primary bank, but also to be exploring financing options outside of the banking system. And that's what we do at Kapitus. We work with small businesses to help them find the capital that they need. And we've been working, lending money to small businesses for 18 years now. We've funded over 50,000 small businesses, and over $5 billion in total capital funded into small businesses. And we like to take a consultative approach in working with a customer to understand what they need, and understand the term of the opportunity that they're looking to finance, and then try to match them up with the right amount of money over the right amount of time in order to facilitate their growth. So if there's a customer out there that is looking to grow their business, we at Kapitus would love to talk to them. But if Kapitus isn't the right solution for you, there are a lot of great lending institutions out there. And I think the first relationship you want to get to know well is your own bank, and working with them to understand how they can help fulfill your capital needs.
Thank you so much, Ben Johnston, small business expert at Kapitus.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed it.
You're very welcome.
You are invited to the Chamber Coalition Small Business Sense Bootcamp. Join our 5-session webinar series where we provide education and business preparation for small business owners and startups. Learn the basics of business planning, how to finance your business alternatives and your credit as an asset, marketing and social media strategies, small business solutions, legal, tax, accounting, banking, and insurance, and how to do business with the government and corporations. Register at startupsbootcamp.eventbrite.com.